Hi, thanks for listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio today. I am your host, Jess Dewell. We are talking about diversification, specifically too much diversification, aka scope creep. Whether we're doing this on a project, like a self-improvement project for ourselves, whether we're doing something within our family in a small unit, whether we are doing something in our team that might be also a small or a medium-sized unit, or within an organization that could be, well, you know how big organizations can get. When we have too many things happening, when too many people are spread too thin, everything stops. And everything stops because the skills that were brought together to make the team as awesome as the team is are just spread too thin. And everybody's point on different things. And when there's no resources and no time or space for people leading up their own projects to support others, well, that's the quickest way to frustration and burnout and missing deadlines, which make unhappy employees, unhappy us, unhappy clients, unhappy customers, you name it. So we want to stay away from that. And today's conversation, when we come back, you will get to meet and hear from Jimmy and Ryan. Before we go to the open, however, I would like to spend a minute and introduce them both. Jimmy Godard is a dynamic, innovative, entrepreneurial, visionary IT program leader. He's accomplished at strategic planning, process and improvements, and re-engineering. He works at Bank of America as a senior service delivery manager. Dr. Ryan Marchman is the founder of the Adjustatorium, a vitalistic chiropractic practice. He travels to speak and teach on the subjects of health, human behavior and potential, and chiropractic mastery. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Jimmy, when we realize there are too many things going on and that nothing's getting done, what do you do about it?
That's an excellent question, because diversification is good and provide us balance when you think about our personal life, when you think about our work, and also our involvement in our community. We really need to expand our minds so that we can remain balanced. And the question is really what you asked. It's when all those areas of our lives are pretty much taking time away from us. We all have 24 hours and we cannot add more to it. However, what we can do is find time for us to do what matters most in our lives. Now, this is a subjective question in regards to what is important. But if you do not spend time taking care of yourself, you do not spend time with your family, you do not spend time to what's important at work, you may get away with it every now and then, but at the end, it will catch up to you. Dwight Eisenhower said it very best. I have two problems. One is urgent and the other one is important. The one that are urgent are not important, and the one that are important are not urgent. This really builds a framework so that we can do two things: prioritization and execution. When we are facing with a lot of tasks to do, a lot of amount of things that just try to take away the time that we have available to us, we need to ask ourselves the question, are those things really important and matter? You have the Eisenhower matrix of tasks that really can help anyone prioritize day-to-day tasks. You will find, as you identify everything that you have to do, some of them are important and urgent. Some of them are urgent, they're not important. Some of them are important, they're not urgent. And some of them, we do not even know why, because they're not urgent and they're not important. And these are usually the tasks that come and steal our time. So first, we need to prioritize our tasks by following that matrix, which makes it easier and we do not have to think about it. And second, we need to schedule the time to address those tasks. And this will help us figure out which ones are the first one to go, and we schedule the time, we empty our brain from any other distraction, and we do something last for execution. We focus on the time on the action, on the task at hand, so that we do not get distracted doing 20,000 things, and at the end of the day, you do not get anything done. So we prioritize, and then we execute.
You know what, people listening? Jimmy may have already listened to one of our previous Voice of Bold Business radio programs where I brought that up, and we were talking about that too. So that's really cool. I like the urgent, not urgent. So you've got the prioritization and the execution piece. And Dwight D. Eisenhower was one smart dude. And
Exactly.
We're smart from studying from him, aren't we? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, Ryan, I am interested to know, when we realize there are too many things going on and nothing is getting done, what do we do about it?
Yeah, well, Jimmy is absolutely right. When we don't fill our day with high priority actions, it automatically fills with low priority actions that don't get you anywhere. That's the not urgent and not important actions. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? So if you don't plan your day by making a list, and you don't have to make a written list, I'm not a written list kind of person, but if you don't list out the highest priority action steps that you can take every day that get you towards your goal, you're automatically going to be doing the low priority action steps that don't get you towards your goal. So first, like Jimmy said, you have to figure out what's important to you. What is your value? What's your vision? Start there every day, and then start to create the task list of things that are going to get you towards your vision. If it doesn't get you towards your vision, if it's not something that's important to you and you like to do, delegate it to somebody else. If it's one of the things that gets you towards your vision, then focus all your energy and activities towards that, and you'll get to where you want to go. Anything that you haven't accounted for in your vision becomes an obstacle in the way of getting to your vision. And that includes your planning. You know, if you're not planning for really maximizing your effectiveness by doing the things that you do well and are important, then you're setting yourself up for failure by trying to do everything. There's a danger in diversification. Diversification is important because nobody can be a one-trick pony. But there's a danger in over-diversification, and that can occur in a couple ways in businesses and in personal lives. One way is you try to be all things to all people, try to do all the services of your business, and then that's a recipe for disaster because you're not all things to all people. And another reason over-diversification can get in the way is that every time you're doing one of those tasks that isn't your task, it's not the one that you value and it's not the one that you're good at, you're robbing somebody else of the opportunity to receive the thing you are good at. Do what you do best, do what you value most, hire other people or delegate to other people so that they can do what they do best and what they value most. And that's a recipe for success.
All right. Both of you touched on the importance of starting here first with ourselves in our heart, mind, body, whatever that combination is for you guys. And I want to stick with that for a minute because leading teams is really important. Running organizations is really important, and how all those moving pieces fit together. I almost think it's as cool as our body's healing itself because we do the actions, and when we're all doing the right actions, all the stuff happens at the right time. And for that to occur, we have to start right here. We have to know, we have to decide we're going to focus, we have to decide we're going to prioritize, and we have to decide which, using your words, Ryan, tricks we're going to do and be good at. And so I'm curious personally from you guys, how did you decide what skills you were going to put at the cornerstone of your professional careers? And what is the skill? And how did you decide or discover that that was going to be a skill that you were able to use in your roles?
The first thing I did was determining what was really important to me by doing a values determinant activity, and you can find them all over the internet. And it's really important whenever you're determining your values not to use social platitudes as values. So when you say, hey, what do you really value? People always say God and family and integrity and honesty. You know, those are social platitudes. What you really value is what you demonstrate in your life and in your business on a day-to-day basis. What you are intrinsically inspired to do, the things that draw you, not the things you have to be reminded to do. Those are things you don't really value, right? And when you're really clear on what is you, then you can start building your day around that. So for me, I'm a natural teacher. I research all the time, and I don't have to be told to do it. I create content a lot. I teach a lot. And I do a lot of speaking. And I work with patients in my office. Anything outside of those activities is a waste of my time. Okay? And I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be done, but I'm saying I'm most effective when I do one of these activities: researching, teaching, creating content, working with patients. Anything that is not that is better off in somebody else's hands. One, because if I spend all my time, for example, doing my bookkeeping, that's time that I'm not helping people with teaching or patients in my office, right? So the way you go about prioritizing it is figure out what you like to do, figure out what you're good at, how you best serve, and that's the capacity you work in when you're closest to 100%, right? So everybody you serve gets you 100%, and everybody that you delegate tasks to can also do things that are their 100%. And that's the goal that I have, is to basically delegate any task, and I'm not quite there yet, but to delegate any task that isn't researching, teaching, speaking, creating content, or working with patients, right?
Well, I think I can jump in here. And Ryan, I think we have quite a few items in comments. And for me, it took me, while I was in a project and one of the sponsors were asking me questions in regards to certain deliverables, and the perception that I gave was I was too busy. And he brought that to my attention. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. And then I had to ask myself the question, what matters most for me? And to Ryan's point, you really have to find your passion. And there is a connection there. It took me some time to establish that serving others was something that's very important to me. So I had to break it down between serving God from a spiritual perspective, and also serving my family by being an exceptional husband. Hopefully my wife believes that too. And a great father. And in addition to that, then serving my community. And my community, my job falls into that. And also getting volunteer in the community does that as well. And to Ryan's point, by outlining those three things that were the most important to me, I have some leadership skills that come into play. I have some learning skills that come into play. I'm somebody who likes to learn, and I like to share my information. And my quest to be a great father, I like to share with my children, but sometimes they believe that information is boring. So I ended up teaching or be a public speaker to other people who may find interest in what interests me. The one thing that I've discovered that used to rob my time is what I used to believe called multitasking. And that pretty much opened my eyes. And I discovered that we do not multitask, we switch tasking. It's hard for us to handle things with, like for instance, I coach basketball, I coach soccer. For me to handle that and at the same time getting involved in a nonprofit organization. By prioritizing, as I mentioned earlier, I'm able to get a lot done, and also by delegating. And most importantly, I've discovered a full sentence that only has one word, and that word is no. If somebody comes and asks me to do something that do not fit into those three categories that I mentioned, it is easy for me to say no. If somebody comes and schedule a meeting at the very last minute, it is easy for me to say no. Why? Because I've already prioritized my day. And if that meeting is urgent because of somebody's lack of discipline, I can evaluate that and see where that fit in terms of my day to make my day more productive. At the beginning of each day, I have developed the discipline to figure out what my day is going to look like. And at the end of each day, I've developed the discipline to find out, did I accomplish that? Sometimes it's not perfect, but I do feel good at the end of every day that what I set out to do, they end up being completed.
So Ryan said he does not keep a list. Do you keep a list that you're planning out at the beginning and looking back at it at the end of the day?
That's an excellent question. I am a list guy. I've discovered a lot that list is not good, but my brain I have so many ideas that come to mind on a day-to-day basis. I have to create a list. And what I do, in which my kids call it procrastination, because when they ask me to do something and I said, not now. And what I do with my list, I use the Eisenhower matrix of tasks. And that's what I do with the list. I take my list, and the list is really a mechanism for me to get things out of my brain. Because if I do not get it out of my head, believe me, I spend the whole day thinking about it. And what it does, it pretty much taking all my energy away from what I should be doing now. So if I have something that comes to mind now, I just write it down, and then I call it is my input box. And then I figure out later in the day, with everything that came to mind, where does that fit in the quadrant? This is important, but it's not urgent. I'll put it there. And then the night before I go to bed, I look at my quadrant and figure out, what do I need to do tomorrow? And I schedule the time for it. And the following day, I focus on it. That does not mean I do not have interruption. However, I develop what we call a sunset policy, where I try to address everything that I set out to do the next day to make sure at least I touch it, making sure it is still relevant, and add or modify the list for the next day.
When I was figuring out I was not a list girl, I wish I had a sunset policy, because my goodness, I would have my little list of 5 things turn into like 100 things, and it was as tiny little stuff as I could get on my paper, and I'm rewriting it every couple of days going, I don't even understand what is half this stuff. It doesn't make any sense anymore, but it's still on my list. That's how I found out I was not a list person either. However, it's really important, whatever that is. I think it's great, Jimmy, because when you talk about it, it's exciting. It makes me want to make a list again. And every one of you that are out there that are list makers, if you're unhappy with your lists, Jimmy's got some wisdom right here. And I want to talk with Ryan a little bit more, because for those people like me and Ryan that are not list people, it can be hard to hold those things. And so before, Ryan, I'm going to ask you how you do it. And before you do that, I decided on a combo. If I don't get it out of my head, written in some form, I will lose it. If I write it down in a document on my computer, I will never look at it again. So I actually have sticky notes. As I'm going through my day, I got sticky notes, and sometimes colors mean something and sometimes they don't, but I'm writing on these sticky notes and I'm sticking them in different baskets all day long. This is something I need to do right now. This is something I need for the Voice of Bold business. This is something for the Voice of Bold business, but we're not going to do it until January, whatever it is. And I'm actually almost prioritizing as I go. Quarter, half year goes on my note, and they're going into baskets. So while I'm not making a list to keep track of, I'm getting them in the baskets. And I go back and I make time during my think time, which I plan every week. I go through those baskets and then I refine further. Okay, these are the long-term projects. These are the short-term. And in the short-term, then I throw them in the matrix. I run them through a filter of urgent, not urgent in that capacity. And then they get blocked out in the calendar somehow. But they're no list. How do you do it, Ryan?
Your list making strategy is a lot more curvilinear than Jimmy's. Jimmy's is very linear. So that's just basic differences in how your two brains operate. But they're achieving the same function. You understand what's important, what's not, what needs to get done and what doesn't, what can be put off. For me, I'm a very tactile person and a very visual person, and I write by hand. So I do make Post-it notes, but I don't like the clutter. So I only make 1 or 2 Post-it notes, for things that need to get done that I can see on my desk right away. I use a lot of legal pads. I write all the time. I get the ideas out of my head. Now, I don't use checklists because, like you, I never go back and check them. But the act of writing them brings them up in my consciousness. And I can go back and look if I need to. But for me, it was a process of really getting clear on what is my role in my life? What is my role in my business? And then I do the activities that fulfill that role, and somebody else does the activities that fulfill another role. So for me, it was more of a defining who I am in my business and in my life. And not to say that you can't do everything. A lot of people are one-man show, but the sooner you can get out of doing more things and you can get into doing the things that are important. So basically the list that I have of things that are high priority action steps for me. I know that Facebook browsing is not a high priority action step, because it doesn't support one of my things, which are creating content, researching in order to create content, of course, public speaking and teaching, and seeing patients in my office, right? So Facebook browsing doesn't fulfill one of those four categories, so I know it's not on my list. So everything that I need to get done on a particular day, I just run it through that filter. Is this something that I'm going to be doing that's going to help me create content? Is this some information that I need? Is this going to help me? Am I writing a report for a patient interaction that I have in an hour, or so on? So for me, it's about a hierarchy of importance that is crystallized in my mind because I've used it so often. So it's not so much a physical list as it is everything that doesn't fulfill one of those four requirements gets dropped. And if it needs to be done, if it's something that's urgent, it gets done by somebody else.
And if it gets dropped, it doesn't really fit anywhere in your thing because you're able to hold whatever. Correct.
And what I've found is that a lot of the things that I would have been doing because I thought they were important but got dropped and never got done didn't matter anyway. Mm-hmm. Right. So it makes my business a lot more efficient because not to say that you should just let things fall the crack. And if something needs to get done, you need to find a way to get it done, whether it's yourself or you hire somebody to do it. But what I found out was that a lot of the things that people think they should be doing are different from the things that they actually should be doing, right? And this process really helped me figure that out for myself. So that, I like that. I'm very efficient. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the pebbles and the rocks and the sand. And either way, both of you guys get to the same thing. You're figuring out what are the boulders, and then what can you fit around the boulders, and then what can you fit around the smaller rocks, what can you fit around the rest with sand, and still have your 24 hours in the day, which is very interesting. And so it's interesting how we can be very different when we define our boulders, if you will, these high priority, impactful things that we must do. Now, leading a team, when we're delegating, how do you guys hold others accountable to the most important, impactful things when it's easy for all of us to get off track? What do you have any secrets or experiences or positive stories that you might be able to share around that?
In terms of working with teams, there are a couple of components. So there's the team at work. I've got one set of experience with that. And also there are teams from nonprofit organizations or volunteers that it's a whole different ball game. I will tell you that much. One thing that I've learned and that have kept me pretty much being productive is something that I call inspect what you expect. In other words, if I were to ask a team member to perform a task, I go back and ask them and check on them, figure out what their status, do they need help. And what I've discovered is, or at least in my experience has been, you will be asked to do something and that person will completely forget about it. Mm-hmm. And here you are working so hard, and then when you present it, they say, oh, I didn't need it anymore. So one thing that I've experienced with team is, I will say it is threefold. The first one, you have the come in and control, where I come and say to the team, here's the vision, we need to work on this. Somebody has to set the vision for the organization. Even managing a project, somebody has to be in the lead to lead the team to get to point A, from point A to point B. For me, that's the top down, said this is what we have to do, guys. Second, there is the servant leadership where you come around and help the team and figure out what everybody needs to get the job done. Because it's one thing to tell them this is where they need to go. It's another thing to provide them with the direction and the support that they need. And once I get this completed, I get into what we call the relationship. I can work hard to develop relationship with the team so that they are passionate about doing the task, instead of seeing this task just as another task that they have to get done. And this is a model that I found to be productive and beneficial for either it is at work or it is working with a nonprofit organization. In a nonprofit organization or a volunteer organization, usually the issue has to do with the person may have the will to get it done, but they don't have the skills to get it done. And that requires usually a lot of hand-holding, a lot of babysitting to really get that person who still have the desire to get something done for you to provide them with the support, the training, and that usually takes a lot of time. But inspect what you expect. Once you give the comment, come back around and support them and develop relationship with people. You usually get things done efficiently.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jimmy, and I don't really have anything to add to that. I just want to emphasize the point that he made on casting the vision, because I won't work with anybody in my business who I first don't sit down with and have a meeting so that they know what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So if I want somebody to build a website for me, for example, I just don't give them the requirements that the website needs to meet. I need them to be on board with my vision and see what I see, so that whenever they're checking their own work, they can look forward and say, is this what he's really going for? Or am I just checking the boxes on the list? And that goes with every facet of my business. Anytime I bring somebody on, or even as a referral partner, I want to have a talk with them and make sure they understand what my objective is, because it can be very easy to miscommunicate, and the person you hire can be working towards their objective, which they think is your objective, but is different.
You are listening to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. This is program 95. We are talking about the danger of too much diversification. And we're going to just keep going with where you left off, Ryan. And how do you know? Let's say you even have had conversations, people are on board, they think they know your vision, they're going and they're doing their work. How do you know when something starts going awry and they're working for their own vision instead of the team vision?
Well, that's exactly what Jimmy said. You have to go back and inspect. You give them the expectation, you cast a vision for them, and then you have to go back and check their work. Even if it's the person that you trust the most in the world and you know the work that they do and they know the work that you do, if you let it go too long without looking at it, you might wind up seeing something you didn't expect, you didn't want. So you always have to go back and check. You know, there's that overused phrase that says work on your business and not in your business, right? Mm-hmm. But it is important to step back and take the bird's eye view of your entire process, you know, from the helicopter view, and see your entire business and all the pieces that fit in it and all the people that fit in it, and make sure that they're making a cohesive whole that you can see moving towards your vision. If you see a piece that seems to be a little bit outside of what you wanted, then you can bring it back in, or you can decide to cut it off completely. It's up to you what you do with it. But it really is important to go back and check other people's work. Now, you don't have to micromanage. I'm not a fan of micromanaging. I like to hire somebody that I really trust and I know that they can do the job, and then I can just look at the result and give them tweaks, right? That's how I prefer to manage. Some people are different, but definitely it's important. As the business owner or as the manager of your own life, you're the one who is ultimately responsible for the result, no matter who you delegate it to. So you have to go back and look.
All I can think of right now is the politics within organizations. And when somebody decides they know better, even though the vision is clear and there's buy-in from everywhere, there are sometimes people with other motives. What do you do with them? We're talking about the danger of too much diversification. One of the dangers would be having somebody on a team that has a different motive and is doing everything in their powerhouse, right? What they can control and influence, because they think the energy should be spent someplace else. So now we have a fractured team. We have a fractured vision. Have you guys been in a situation like that? And how did you address it?
Wow, we could have a whole podcast on this one. At work, I'm a change manager as well. So I manage people, process, and technology. And I always make that statement. From a process perspective, I can come up with any type of methodology to get things done. From a technology standpoint, I am an innovator. I love technology. We can find ways to get things automated, to get things done. When it's about getting people on board to get things done, you are faced with a whole different ball game. And besides brain and some strategy, I don't think there's a silver bullet. And on a very professional and serious way, this is really what I have experienced. You may have a strategy. And this is where I get to the notion of inspect what you expect. You may have a strategy that you get down to the vision, top down, you cast it out for the organization and you let the team go. And you come back behind them and figure out, okay, guys, what are we doing? Do you need help? This is where you get in and stay involved. Because if you do not, what you may find out, your vision, your strategy may get diluted or polluted before it gets down to the frontline employees to get things implemented. through several changes or part of change management prospect, I have projects. I have discovered that all leaders should really focus on having three core components or three core constituents around you. You have the core folks that you can allow yourself to be vulnerable because you have to talk to somebody, otherwise you'll go nuts. Those are called those people the core. I call them the core because most of them are on the project. Most of them join you in the organization because of who you are. They see something about you that there are some common values, common background, common focus, that these people are here for you. They want to support you. You have other people who are here for the cause. They're not here for you. They're here to take the organization from point A to point B. If you move tomorrow, so be it. They will be fine with the other leader that comes because these people are focused on the future of the organization, not the particular leader. And you have the people who are here for the ride. They have their own agenda. They will probably use you to get to where they want to go, to where they want to be. And at the end, they may even turn against you. The important thing here is to identify who is who. In my line of work, we call that stakeholder management. Figure out people in different organizations may have different goals. The way I like to address it is, whatever your goal is, if you're going to help me to go from point A to point B, as long as I know who you are, I'm fine with it. Is for leaders not to make the mistake to think somebody who is a part of the external core and they treat that person as a confidant, because that person will get all the information they want to get out of you. As soon as the project is done, you find yourself in a very sticky situation. And this is something that I've seen happen over and over and over again. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, part of stakeholder management, you have to understand who is around you. You have to understand who really gets the vision, your strategy, and for you to make sure it is not polluted or diluted as it gets down. And really keep your friends, keep your enemy close and your friends closer. Seriously. Because as you go further in the organization, those people tend to reveal themselves on who they are.
Anything you would add to that, Ryan, from your experiences?
Well, I don't have a lot of experience dealing with large organizations. The largest organization I probably dealt with was when I was an educator teaching in school, 20 or so faculty and a few hundred students or whatever, I don't know. I can see a lot of the parallels between Jimmy's approach and mine, and his is definitely much more systematized. But basically, I have the same message, which is you have to get to know the people you're working with. And I always come back to values, right? You got to know what's valuable for you and important for you. Every single person in your organization, every single person in your life, everyone in the world is automatically going to be doing what they value most, whether it is in line with your vision or not. It's just what people do. So you have to talk with them in the language of their values and figure out how accomplishing this thing for you is going to fulfill their highest value. And if there's no way for that, they're not the right person. You need them off the team. If there is a way for that, then connecting what they really love and want with what you really love and want is the key. Right? Those are the people who can get behind either you and your vision or the company and the company's vision. The third group of people Jimmy talked about, where people are out for themselves, I've been in that group. And I know that sometimes you have to start somewhere to get where you're going in your career. And I would say that some of them you just have to let them go. And others of them, you can befriend them and actually coach them out of your company into what it is they really desire. Because if their ultimate goal is not in line with yours, you don't want them in your company, but you don't necessarily need to make an enemy of them either, right? So you can find out where they want to go and help them get the resources to get there, even if it's not on your team.
Both of you and all of us, we do keep coming back to values. Will you just share one of your values and how you define it?
This is based on the work of Dr. John DeMartini, and he has a whole thing about values. He's written books about it. The way you determine your values, they're already there. You don't have to pick them. They're in there. You just got to find out what they are, because we have so much training in our minds about what our values should be that we don't know what they really are. Ask yourself certain questions like, what do you surround yourself with in your physical space? If you come to my office or you come to my apartment, there are books everywhere. You know that learning is one of my values. What do you spend your money on? What do you spend your time doing? What do you spend your time visualizing, not fantasizing, but visualizing that actually comes to pass in your life? Where do you spend your energy planning? Where are you the most organized? And if you make these lists in the different areas of your life, you'll find some overlaps. So the things that are most valuable to you are the ones that you do most often, that you are most organized in, you think about most often, right? And for many people, that may be a hobby. It may be something that people think they need to have work as their highest value, or they need to have this or that. But really what they're expressing in their life as their highest value might be something that they didn't expect, but what they really love. So that's how you determine and start to define these values for yourself. And you can, there's a whole nother story. You can change the level of, if you, for example, don't have a value on money, you can raise that up in your values list once you're aware of it and things like that. But obviously one of my highest values is learning and teaching. And I found that out because throughout my life in various capacities, I've been taking care of people for 9 years now. I've been teaching for 15 years. And no matter where I was in my life, I always had a teaching position somewhere. And in some capacity, I was leading workshops, or I was working as a professional teacher, or I was tutoring people. And so I just discovered that throughout my life, that's been one of my expressed values. Now, if you had asked me before I became aware of this work, what is most valuable to you, I would have said enlightenment or meditation or something, But what's really expressed in my life is what I'm talking about as a value.
Yeah, I think Ryan pretty much summarized it very well. And personally, I get to kind of differentiate or put some distinction between my passion and also what I value the most. And as I stated earlier, I would say that value for me is serving, and serving God, serving my family, and serving my community. I strongly believe we are put on this earth for a reason. And we are giving so much, I would say so many gifts and talents that are invested within us that we can serve others. And what a waste it would be at the end of our lifetime, we leave a legacy of nothing when we have so much inherently within us that we can benefit our community. And one of my passions growing up when I was a kid, I was very curious. And I wanted to learn anything. When I started studying philosophy, I had this great dream that I would know everything that's under the sun. If it is known to men, I should know about it. And this has remained my passion. I like to learn. And I don't recall where I read this. It was, a wise man knows how much he does not know. And the more you know, the more you find out how much you do not know. And for me, that's fascinating. And that passion for me to learn about everything, about anything, and use that to serve my community, to serve my family, for me is the real thing that's valuable, is the thing that matters most for me.
And what it comes down to is the prioritization and choosing it every single time we choose that value, one of our values, the one and all of them at the same time, really. What does it mean then as a leader when we are bold leaders going forward? How does staying not too narrow, but not too diverse, how does that actually just help us be bold in today's marketplace as leaders?
Well, like you said, it's important not to be too narrow. And when people think about expanding the scope of their business and diversifying their portfolios and their holdings, they tend to think that they have to do it all themselves. In order for me to start investing in the stock market, suddenly I have to be a stock market investor. And then, for me to start marketing my business, suddenly I have to be a marketer. And they try to over diversify their own role in their business or in their life. You can diversify a business as much as you want, and you can grow it as much as you want, and you can serve as many sectors of society as you want, as long as you know where your strength is and you play there, and then hire everybody else out to do what their strength is. The way it allows you to be bold is when you know your role and you know what you do, you can release responsibility for all of the things that don't fulfill you, that you're not driven to do, that you have to be reminded to do. If you can really do what you love, and whenever you're doing whatever it is that you love, it's not work anymore. It's like your vocation becomes your vacation. It's automatic, right? If you're having to constantly push content out of yourself, or push yourself to go to, you can't get up and tap dance to work like Warren Buffett says, then you're really playing in the wrong arena. So whenever you're really clear about what is important to you, what are you good at, where do you serve your business, your life, the people in your life, and you play there and you stay there. You can get as big as you want as long as you're clear on that. It allows you to relinquish the resentment people have for themselves about, oh, I didn't get this done or I didn't get that done. Well, that's okay. Give it to somebody who is going to do it better than you. And allows you to be hugely bold in your business because you can do what's important to you. You can be you and nothing else.
That's excellent, Ryan. Very well said. And for me, one thing that I've discovered, it was a struggle with my whole philosophy. I need to know everything that's under the sun. Everything that falls under my hand, I feel like I have to research it from sunrise to sunset so I can be good at it. Quickly, when I get to project management, to program management, portfolio management, I quickly discovered that was not sustainable. Yet I still love learning. The good thing that came out of it for me has been it has helped me identify resources adequately. By learning so much about innovation, by learning so much about technology, I can sit down and talk about the contract negotiation with folks in the arena, with folks in that industry, and be knowledgeable about it. I'm not expert. I know enough to be dangerous. So it is interesting how folks who know that you're not part of an industry start coming up with jargon, start coming up with all the way to rationalize just so that they can kind of take the upper hand. But this is where that has helped me. That has helped me to filter out the non-professional or the non-competent one so that I identify folks who are good. One example is art. I loved art. I love looking at it. I don't like doing it. Granted, I married a wonderful woman who is very artistic. And at first, when we were dating, I said, hey, if you know how to do art, I should be able to do it as well. And we were doing art together. I quickly found out, no, I've made the best investment of my life marrying an awesome artist. I don't need to learn art. So that was when things start opening up my eyes and say, I just need to befriend people who are good of what I'm looking for. And I don't have to be the know-it-all, because once you think you know it all, you start doing things all yourself. You're really doing a disservice to yourself, because as leaders, we need to step back and look at the big vision. I like to say if I want to build a boat, I will tell my team, I want to get from point A to Jamaica, and let them figure out how to get us there. Now, I may have an idea how to get us there. I'm not going to tell them. I want them to come and surprise me. If they say, Jimmy, we have to swim, I'll say, okay, next. So by having certain understanding of the industry has helped me figure out things, how to get things done well and efficient, but also to identify the right resources, like the great book Good to Great said, to have the right people in the bus. They don't have to be in the right seat at first, but I can identify great resources to join me in the cause, and then together, this is the whole command and control, servant leadership, and also to build relationship to really get things moving forward. At least from a diversification perspective, that's what I have seen. Learning a lot has helped me to really get me to where I want to be.
All right. This program 95, The Danger of Too Much Diversification. Program notes can be found at the website voiceofboldbusiness.com/P95. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 95. After listening to what Jimmy and Ryan shared today, make sure you subscribe and you rate the Voice of Bold Business. This is the type of information where we can have our core, we can learn from people, we can expose our vulnerabilities to each other in a way that helps us personally and professionally in our growth and our goals. Our experiences and our beliefs define what it means to be a leader today. Problem solving comes from thinking about what our business initiatives are, what the vision and the values are, and ultimately the requirements to get to our end goal. It's through us starting right here with ourselves and being a model to our teams and having a consistent process to bring everybody back in where they need to come from to stay on vision and to keep that buy-in, as Jimmy said, because it's dangerous to have too much diversification.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.